Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Forward Capital Crusaders podcast. And we come out of the half and settle in for our first feature piece of the season. Now, did you know that Capital had a former professional athlete that played in one of the largest sports organizations on the planet? Well, we do. And he's a man that at times is quiet by nature, but has a large presence on the football field at Capital University, and that is assistant coach Keith Rucker. Coach Rucker, thanks for joining us. This is a long overdue edition of storytelling here, and we're glad that you're willing and open to talk about your personal journey that took you through the NFL ranks for a number of years. So, Coach, give us a little bit of a resume or a background check as far as what are some of your most notable career notes from the time that you entered the NFL and to the point where we stand here today.
Okay, well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I'm glad to be here. Basically, some of the most notable things in my life, especially in the collegiate NFL times, was being the first Division III player in the history of college football to be invited to and play in the Hula Bowl. That was a big honor for me. Got to go over to Hawaii and play. Family was invited and flown over, so it was a great time to represent not only Ohio Wesleyan and Division III football, but for my family's name. Then getting the opportunity to go to the NFL Combine as a Division III football player, getting to compete with guys that I watched on TV after my games were over on Saturday, so that was an awesome experience. To playing in Arizona, starting in Arizona, ended up coming back to Ohio and playing in Ohio, got to reunite with a lot of my classmates and teammates and family, got back close to my family. And then finishing up basically in Kansas City, which was, I got to play with Derek Thomas, some of the greats to ever play the game, and it was neat. The biggest experience for me was to play with so many different high caliber players and watch how they prepared, and that all of a sudden kind of helped me propel my game once I got there, because it was a little bit of a difference when I got to the NFL from being at a Division III college where we watch film but not as much as they do at the high level of playing in the NFL. So it was a great experience. I wouldn't change it for the world. It's taught me a lot about life, how to, fall and get up, and, from getting cut by Buddy Ryan and him telling me that's the last time I put on an NFL uniform. I mean, we had a lot of ups and downs in the NFL, and they're still going through it now. And, I just happen to be one of the guys that went through it.
Well, we'll get a chance to dive deeper into that time period in a little bit, but we can't really go too far before we kind of build the foundation of you. And so talk about, where you grew up, a little bit about your family, the baby Keith Rucker, so to say.
Yeah, I always tell a funny story. I always tell my family, because when they introduce me, I'm the youngest of 8 kids, and they always say, "This is my baby brother," and I'm like towering over him. I'm like, "I'm not a baby. I'm your youngest." So, but yeah, my family history starts in Belzona, Mississippi. When I was a year of age, my father passed away, and again, being the youngest of 8 kids, Mom moved us up north to Chicago with some of my father's family who had moved up north. So it kind of all started there. Grew up in a suburb just south of Chicago called Harvey, Illinois. Again, youngest of 8, started playing football at 6 years old. 4 boys, 4 girls. All the boys did sports, and the girls were Mom's girls. They did the cooking and cleaning and took care of the boys. So it was a good time growing up there. And my mom lost her parents she lost her mom when she was 9 and her dad when she was 14. So to my aunts and uncles, she's their mom, and she's not the oldest. She's like the second oldest, but my aunts and uncles call her mom, still to this day. So she's always been a great leader and shown us the way, and not told us how to do it, but showed us how to do it. So and she's still alive. She's 86 this year. and she is alive and kicking still. So we're happy to be blessed to still have her. But growing up in the south suburbs of Chicago, played football, played basketball like most kids. I spent a lot of time at the park back then. And as I got to high school, my brother, who's my oldest sibling right now, he actually was at Marquette Dental School in Milwaukee, and we had moved to a neighborhood where me, my brother, and sister were the only blacks in the school, and I was okay because I did all the sports, so everybody kind of accepted me, but my brother and sister weren't really involved, and so they would skip school and not go to school, and then it got to the point where it was like, you can't go to school either. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, if we ain't going, you ain't going. And so I ended up missing a lot of school. My brother came in town over, I want to say it was over summer or something, and him and my mom had a long discussion. Long story short, I ended up moving to Milwaukee, Wisconsin with him while he was in Marquette Dental School, which was, at this point, this was going to be my third high school because I attended 5 high schools. So this was my third high school. That school shut down and became a school of the arts. So, of course, I transferred from there into my fourth school, which was West Dallas Central, which was way out in the suburbs. I bused probably 45 minutes each way every day to and from. And then that year, my brother graduated from Marquette Dental School and moved to Cleveland to do his dental residency. So we ended up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, at Shaker Heights High School. And basically, after that year, I ended up signing a scholarship to go to Eastern Michigan. Went there as a tight end, and when I got there, I had ate myself out of being a tight end. In high school, my freshman year, I was 185 pounds. My sophomore year, I was 285. My junior year, I was 225, and then my senior year, I was 260. And got to Eastern Michigan my freshman year, and I was 311. And they was like, well, why don't you get one of those 50 or 60 numbers? So I ate myself out of playing tight end. So went to Eastern Michigan. I was there for the first year. Very touching situation where my academics were not my priority. I was sat down with some of the staff there at Eastern Michigan and, hey, you're one of our top recruits. Don't worry about classes and tests. Be at games, be at practice, be on time, and there was a lot of incentives that you were given. And as far as money, cars, I spent the majority of my freshman year in Detroit. That's what everybody else was doing on the roster who was given that perk, and so red flags went up, and they basically told me you got spring and summer to take 2 classes each term, and get a C or better to obtain keep your scholarship. And I couldn't even do that. I felt like the coaches would figure a way out. And so not only do I got to pack up and leave, I got to go home and tell my brother I lost my scholarship. And this is kind of the story I tell my kids because I want them to understand how you can go from having everything at one moment to having nothing the next moment. And so I went home. I was going to a junior college there in Chicago in south suburbs. I worked every night from 8 at night to 4 in the morning and went to classes from 8 to 1 every day. And it was mind altering. And so what happened was after a year of going to JUCO, my brother and I kind of rekindled our relationship. And he finally came to me and was like, hey, Coach Hallway is at Ohio Wesleyan. And do you want to go up there for a visit? So I was like, yeah, that's fine. So over Christmas break, I went and visited Ohio Wesleyan and never left. I was there for 3 years after that.
That is a lot to unpack right there. Yes. I mean, that in itself is a story. We could probably wrap it up right here and be done, but there's so much more to it that comes after the fact. But I guess take a step back just real quick because I think that, in your story and switching high schools and being the youngest of 8 with a single mom, talk about at the point at which you were like, yes, this football thing has legs. I could possibly do something with this. When did that click in, and how did you begin to prepare yourself to pursue that?
I think honestly, as a kid, I always said it. My mom has narcolepsy, so she falls asleep constantly, and I just remember as a kid driving around with her and her dozing and me turning the radio up loud and rolling the windows up and down trying to keep her awake. And I used to always say, when I grow up, I'm gonna play pro football and I'm gonna get you a chauffeur and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. So, that's when I first really started thinking about it, and I think the seed got planted. But when I really saw it as reality that it could possibly happen was probably my senior year of high school. My senior year of high school, realizing that, I went to Shaker, we were 10-0, and there was a lot of rumbles about, how many guys we sent to Division I that year and how many Division I guys make it to the pros. And then it really hit me when I got to college, because there are a lot of guys I played with at Eastern Michigan, even in that year, that were going on to play professionally after that. And I was like, man, the stage is big. And so then I took that step back when I lost my scholarship, and I was like, man, this ain't going to happen. Anybody looking for an NFL guy in D3? And so my junior year at Ohio Wesleyan, we had two players there. And I guess I should go backwards. Our head football coach's dad was a general manager of the Minnesota Vikings when I was at Wesleyan. So, and this was a Coach Hallway, that coached my brother when he was in college at Augustana. So that was the connection to me getting to Ohio Wesleyan. But my junior year, there was two seniors on my team. A running back, he was a D1 transfer from UMass. And then we had a defensive end that was from Rhode Island, that was an All-American lacrosse player. So a lot of NFL teams were coming in talking to them guys, and they're watching their film, and then they start seeing me. And then that's when it kind of started to get back to the point I got a shot. It's going to be a small one, but I got a shot. And then I thought maybe my coach's dad would be, all over me. And to be honest, the Minnesota Vikings, I still haven't figured out this to this day. The Minnesota Vikings were the only team of 32 that didn't come in and work me out at Ohio Wesleyan. Still haven't figured that out, but I move on. I just looked at it as a challenge, and so they came in to look at those other guys, saw me. And my junior year, I was actually offered opportunity to come out and be on the practice squad with the 49ers. Contacted my brother. He's like, what do you think? I said, well, I don't know. I said, it's my second opportunity for my degree, so I want to make sure I get my degree. He said, well, I'm going to just say this, and I'm going to let you make the decision. He said, if they're looking at you now, just think about you coming back, having a great senior year, and then think about if they're just trying to sign you to the practice squad now, maybe next year you can possibly be drafted. Who knows? Nobody knows. So I was like, well, that makes sense. I'm going to stay at school. I'm kind of enjoying being back in school, and I don't want to leave early and then have to go back at some point later and finish. So I ended up staying there. And, glad I did. I was, again, All-American and national champ, defending national champ in shot put and discus in Division III. So I wanted to kind of defend all of my titles. And so it was like, I think there was about a week left in our season, and the head coach announced that I had been extended an invitation to play in the Hula Bowl. And that's when things kind of started to, I'm like, man, this thing might really be able to take off. So, and my senior year was the most organized I've ever been academically. And it was because everything was laid out. Everything had a date, a timeline to it. So it turned out being a great year for me. So I ended up playing basketball. And then when the Hula Bowl was over, about a month later, I got an invite to the NFL Combine. So I'm like, this thing is starting to pick up a little steam now. So indoor track was over, basketball ended. I started outdoor track. When outdoor track started, there was a lot of deadlines that I had to figure out if I was going to do, because about the time we found after the draft was over, I signed a free agent contract with the the Phoenix Cardinals, and I found out that minicamp was started the same day as graduation. So had a decision to make, and I decided, and also I had to forego nationals because nationals was that week too. So, but I ended up going to camp with the Cardinals, and the best decision I made. And it just led to 8 years of fun and getting paid to do something that I love to do.
So you were a 14-time All-American between 2 different sports at Ohio Wesleyan. Mm-hmm. And if that wasn't enough, like you said, you go to the Hula Bowl and you participate among some of the best seniors in college football. Mm-hmm. And then you go and make the big leap. Now, you mentioned that the NFL draft kind of came and went, and that was even at a time when the NFL draft was much more expansive than it is today. Yep. Did the dream diminish at all when you didn't hear your name called, or was that another challenge issued, or was it something that you expected?
Well, I didn't expect it. Looking at Mel Kiper Jr.'s ratings and listening to
we don't believe
the
in
media.
Him anyway.
I was telling you, I was pretty pumped up because they said what they were saying is I was going to be one of the top 3 defensive linemen, interior linemen drafted that year after Bill Johnson at Michigan State, and then I forget where the other kid was from. But, so I'm reading these magazines, seeing my name. I'm like, woo, this is pretty good. And so got to the point, I'm sitting at home, draft is going on, and I'm glad I didn't have a party like I was planning on. So I'm sitting there, the phone rings, Atlanta Falcons. They're like, yeah, we got a pick coming up, second round. Just stick by the phone. All of a sudden, second round's over, third round goes. Then I get a call from another team and another team. And it just went on and on. And finally, at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I said, I'm going to just head back to school. So the dream did diminish a whole lot because I was like, man, this is all this hype. I went to the combine, ran a great time, thought I did pretty well lifting and with all my meetings and stuff that we have with them, and got back to school. And like the next day, my coach called me. He's like, can you come down to the office? And I'm like, yeah. So he's like, I come down and they got this big banner over the door said Keith Rucker is a Phoenix Cardinal. And I'm like, wow, did I miss myself getting drafted? and at that point, I wasn't even thinking about the free agency deal. And so my agent had called my brother. My brother called Coach Hallway. And so Coach Hallway, delivered the news to me, like in front of the entire team and that stuff. So basically I signed a free agent contract with the Cardinals, and I went in there, and I still tell my guys that I coach now to this day, when we're going over depth chart, I'm like, my name was dangling off the bottom of the depth chart. And my agent was like, well, this is the best opportunity you got. We picked a team where they're kind of old and inexperienced, but not very good. So we go through that. And so it gets to the point where names are starting to drop and mine's starting to move back and forth from one side to the other to the middle, and ended up making the team after that last round of cuts they made. We came down from training camp and they made the phone call. I made the team. And then the first week we played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so we go to Tampa. Coach is like, man, it's hot and muggy out there. It's humid. You got to be ready to go. We're going to need you. We're going to play you a lot tomorrow. I got 2 snaps, and they were both field goal blocks. I'm like, dang. So second week, we play the Redskins. So we play Washington Redskins. I play against Jim Lachey from Ohio State, big stud tackle. Ended up having 8 tackles and 2 sacks. So the third week, we had a bye week. So we come back from the bye week, and we got the Cowboys the next week. And so my D-line coach called me in his office. He's like, hey, I need to talk to you. He's like, yeah, we're going to switch our defense. We're going to run what we call a big nickel, and you're going to be starting in that. So anytime you hear big nickel, you go. I said, okay. And so it still hadn't sunk into me that this is what we're going to eventually evolve to. And so we're playing against the Dallas Cowboys, and 3-man front is not working. All of a sudden, they big nickel. So I go on the field, boom, smash Emmitt Smith. Next play hit Daryl Johnston. I mean, from then on, it was like, okay, big nickel is our base now. And so from then on, I mean, from week 3 on, I've been a starter in the NFL. We never gave up 100 yards in the 3 years I was there, in 6 games to Emmitt Smith. He never got over 100 yards rushing. And the crazy part about it, those 3 years were the 3 years they won the Super Bowl.
No doubt. Now, I got to tell you, as a Cowboys fan, you're breaking my heart here. I'm telling you. So I guess that prompts another question, for those people that think, like, they watch TV and they're like, I can do that. Mm-hmm. What's your message to them?
Hey, if you can, I've been told since I was a little kid, if you can believe it, you can achieve it.
Now, what about for the people like me that are on the couch eating potato chips and drinking beer and watching the game be like, I can do that. What is he doing? Like, now what do you say to those people?
I say to those people, just keep believing. Keep believing, because, yes, my brother's the same way. He'll sit there all the time. And, man, I don't know why they would call that. If I was in that position, I would have. I'm like, would you? Why would you have done that? And then there's no answer. So I'm like, okay.
Coach Rucker, I think that when you were first hired here at Capital, I may have even mentioned this to you, but if not, I remember you as a Cincinnati Bengal because like a lot of kids, I played the Madden video game, probably on the Super Nintendo at that point in time, and I remember lining up my Cowboys and just thought, man, that is a big dude that's coming at my guy. Did you ever play as yourself in the video game or think, holy crap, I'm in a video game?
Yeah, I played a little bit. It was cool, though, growing up and thinking about all the video games and then actually seeing your name on it. I'm like, even like on Tecmo Bowl, they always got the name over the guy. So it was quite an experience for me, and we played a lot when I was in Arizona. I mean, we were like a bunch of big kids, man. We go to somebody's house, have a tournament, be there for 2 days playing the video games. It was pretty cool, man, and to have my nephews and my family members to be able to say, that's my cousin, that's my family member right there. It's a pretty cool honor.
Yeah, well, now kids nowadays can just create a player and they can put their name on it. You actually earned it. So.
Yes.
Well, we're talking with assistant football coach Keith Rucker and just kind of going through his life through college, the NFL, and now we kind of transition into life after the NFL. Talk about what that transition out of the NFL and into a new profession was like for you.
Well, the biggest thing for me is after I retired and finished playing football, there were 4 classes that I needed because I was an education major. There was 4 classes I needed to retake because their requirements had changed over those 7 or 8 years I was gone. So I went back to Ohio Wesleyan, and I had an academic advisor there, and she happened to be a heaven sent for me. Margie Shade said to me before I left, she's like, now, you told me you were going to graduate, and I understand this NFL opportunity, she said, but I want you, the only way I give you my blessings is if you promise me that when you're done, you're going to call me and come back and finish. So I said, I promise. And, I probably didn't realize the ramifications it had, what I was saying at that time. But I knew what my dream was. So I was like, yeah, I said, I'll come back. So as soon as I retired, I get back to my mom's house, unpack my truck. I called Margie. I said, Margie, I'm done with football. And she's like, are you serious? I said, yep. She said, are you sure you're done? I said, yeah. She said, because you only need 4 classes to get your degree completed. And those other 2 classes we got rid of. So what we're going to do is have you take those like in a summer course or something like that. I forget how I did it. And so I ended up taking those classes, started those first 2 classes, and she called me about a week later. She said, when can you be in Delaware? And I was like, well, I'm not really doing anything, so whenever. She said, well, I'm going to give you 2 weeks, and I want you to show up. I got something in the works. So I get there, and she has it set up with the president of the university that if I coach football and track for the year, they're going to allow me to take all of those 6 classes and pay for it. Plus, they were paying for my room and board, so I just stayed in the stadium at Ohio Wesleyan. There's like offices upstairs, and they turn them into rooms for like GAs and interns. So that's where I stayed in the stadium. Had access to the laundry room, training room, everything was at my fingertips. So I ended up going back, and I coached football there my freshman year, actually coached the D-line. And then I coached track, shot put and disc for the second semester, indoor and outdoor. And while I was there, I met a guy who actually had just gotten a head coaching job at Mount Healthy High School in Cincinnati. which is where my wife was at. So I'm like, well, yeah, I think I can handle that. So I talk to him. I'm like, you need any coaches down there? And he's like, yep. He's like, I can probably get you in the building, but you won't be a PE teacher until next year. You have to do like a study hall or some kind of monitor supervisory. I said, whatever you can do to get me in the building. So he got me in as a study hall teacher there, and I coached football. Then one of the football coaches talked me into coaching basketball. So I was a head freshman basketball coach. We ended up winning the conference championship. And then I, of course, did track. So it kind of rolled right in there. The next thing you know, 4 years later, that head coach leaves, and he goes to Oak Hills High School. And the AD at the time was like, hey, if you stay, I can pretty much guarantee you'll be our next head coach. And I'm like, so I've been an assistant, I've been a coordinator, so I want to be a head coach. So he left, and I became the head coach for the next 4 years. And, then after that school system got a little tiring for me. It was a little rough to deal with because they had a lot of kids. Like, I would have to go pick them up to get them to come to practice. And you get to the house, and there's 3 cars in the driveway. So I said, I need something different. So I moved on. I went and coached at Loveland High School and had a great 2 years there, actually. And then I went to Aiken High School. That was as an assistant. I went to Aiken as a head coach. I was ready to jump back into head coaching. Then I went over to Princeton High School, which was my residential school. I ended up going there for 2 years. And after 2 years there and being in the building, I ended up getting a call from Ohio Wesleyan, my alma mater. And they brought me on staff there. And I was there 4 or 5 years. And my second to youngest son, who's a freshman in college now at Tiffin, he was like a sophomore in high school. And he was going to school in Hamilton, which was probably 20, 30 minutes from our house. My wife teaches in Cincinnati Public the total opposite way. So I took a year off from coaching at Wesleyan to actually go home, work at a high school there. I coached at LaSalle High School that year. And then when I was done, he had his license. I reached back out to our old AD here, Roger Ingalls, and asked him if he knew of any coaching jobs in the area. That's when he told me, he said, well, I'm at Capital now. I'm not at Wesleyan anymore. And I was like, well, do you know if the coach is looking for guys? He said, you know what? As a matter of fact, I think we just lost a coach. And I said, well, can you put me in touch with the head coach? So he had the head coach call me. Great young staff, a lot of young minds, and, a program that was in the position to be changed, and I wanted to be a part of that change.
All right, we're here with assistant coach Keith Rucker as we wrap up our feature spotlight on his life and NFL career, and now getting into the back end as an assistant coach with Capital Football, and coach from the NFL to a Division III coaching rank. What are some of either the lessons or maybe even just some of the techniques and things that you can teach even a D3 athlete that they can take with them and succeed?
For me, the biggest crossover is just technique. And that's what I teach. I have a training company that I run, and a skilled training company for offensive and defensive linemen. And it's really all about technique and teaching guys how to move their feet. But I think the biggest crossover for me was just being a technician. I always tell kids, I say, if I can pick this stud athlete over here and I can pick this technician who's probably not as good as he is naturally, I'm going to take the technician because he's going to continue to do it right because that's the way you're supposed to do it. Where this stud over here, if his game gets off a little bit, he's going to start adjusting and changing stuff because it's not working like it used to. But this guy's just going to consistently do it over and over and over the right way because that's the way to do it. And so that's my biggest, I think, crossover. And even for me, going from a Division III school and playing on the big stage with the boys that played D1 and even some D2 guys when they were in college, it all comes down to, on a line in the trenches, it all comes down to inside hands and the low man wins. So, that's the technique I would talk to kids about, is just whatever position you play, make sure you can do all the basic fundamental techniques and just basically master it. and continue working at it. And that's how I train the guys that I train in trench skills. It's all basics. We talk about footwork, agility, and then we got some drills that we do. So.
Well, I know, Coach, that in a previous question you mentioned that, being able to help, to choose to help, was an important had an impact on your life by someone that chose to help you.
Yes.
You have now chosen to help others in the Reach for the Sky Foundation, a nonprofit that helps youth that are looking to get into the game and even go beyond it. Talk to us a little bit about Reach for the Sky.
Okay, Reach for the Sky started in 2004, and then it came about probably a year before. So I would say probably 2003 is when it really came about. I was working a former professional football player's camp. And part of working the camp, they paid us like $400 or $500 for working this camp. And part of your duty was you had a secondary duty. So my secondary duty was to stand in the parking lot, and when cars come, stop the cars so people can go from the parking lot up to the fields. And so this van pulls up, and there's 4 kids in it, but only one got out. And I was like, I didn't understand. So I noticed that the guy went and parked, and they were walking across. So I stopped the traffic. So I'm messing with the other 3 guys. I'm like, man, you guys don't like football? They're like, yeah, we like football. I was like, weren't you just in the van? They were like, yeah. And the dad was like, well, the camp costs $300, so I can only afford for him to go this year. He'll go next year. He'll go the year. And it just caught me by storm. I'm like, how bad is that? So I started thinking in all camp. I said, I got to do something about that. So first thing I did is I went up to the guy who camped with. I said, do me a favor. I said, I'm going to work your camp for free for the next 3 days. I said, I don't want you to pay me. I want you to scholarship a kid. When I got home, I talked to my wife, and I was like, I told her the story. She was like, that sucks. I said, yeah. I said, so I want to do something for those 3 kids that couldn't get out of that van, who couldn't go to the camp. Well, over the next 5 or 6 months, I put together a board. I talked to people about what dates look good to do camps. What are we going to do in the camps? Because it started out as football and basketball. Then I did football, basketball, and cheer. Then I started losing a lot of the basketball kids because I couldn't get the caliber coaches that I could from football. So then we went football, cheerleading, and we started to incorporate some classroom stuff, some computer stuff. And I started bringing people in to guest speak. But I think the extra added thing that I give is we actually feed the kids breakfast. We feed them lunch. They get Camper of the Day T-shirts and awards, little trophies and stuff. And so I do a 2-day camp. And everybody say, well, what's the difference between 1 day and 2 day? I said, well, you serve more kids, first of all. Second of all, you get to find out what that kid retained from the day before. If you do a 1-day camp, you got to wait till next year to try to see what that kid learned. If it's about community, there is so many resources out there, and that's how the camp runs. So that first year I told you we had about 48 kids, where we're averaging, and I do a camp in Cincinnati, Memorial Day weekend, and then I do one in Chicago, in my hometown, the second week of July. So we're doing both of these camps. Each of the camps average about 350 kids a year. And we're still doing football and cheer. And we get the best coaches, high school coaches and youth league coaches in the area come out and help out. It's a very good setup, very well-oiled machine. It's just an opportunity to give back to the community, get the kids out the front of the TVs for a couple of days, playing video games, let them come out and have fun.
Well, the Reach for the Sky Foundation is certainly doing some fantastic work for youth boys and girls in both of those areas. So for those that may be looking for a little bit more information to contribute or even be a part of it, where can we direct them to and how can they get involved?
Our website is reach4thesky.org, and it has further contact information on there. It lets you know when the camps are. It's had photos on there. And we turn no volunteers away as long as they're there for the kids. And our foundation motto is we're all about the kids, and those are the kind of people we're looking for. So if people are all about helping kids and giving them some great experiences as they grow up and to teach them how to give back, then reachforthesky.org is the website. Give us a call, get in touch with any of the board members, and we'll get you set up and on the volunteer list.
Well, that sounds fantastic. We encourage everybody to at least consider it and perhaps even participate in it. And Coach Ruck, thank you so much for not only just doing the work that you're doing with the Reach for the Sky Foundation, the work that you're doing with our student athletes, and sharing your story to show just what determination, passion, and drive can do to get somebody from, as you said, small town Mississippi, all the way to Columbus, Ohio, bouncing back between major cities up here in the Midwest.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, and I appreciate you guys on what you're doing as well, Ryan.
All right. Well, thank you, Coach Ruck. You've been listening to assistant football coach Keith Rucker here at Capital University describe his path, his life through high school, college, the NFL, and now right here in Columbus, Ohio with Capital University. Stick around, and we'll bring you a little bit more as we move forward on the Forward Capital Crusaders podcast.